like a halo.
What's up, schizos? Today we're going to be learning about the DSM-5, and then we're going to learn about some mental disorders, their symptoms, and how to treat them. So what is the DSM-5? Well, the DSM-5 is a long-ass book. It's got 947 pages, none of which have pictures, so it's stupid. The DSM-5 is published by the APA, American Psychiatric Association, and it documents every known mental disorder. It also lists the symptoms and how to treat the patient. It's basically like a choose-your-own-adventure for hypochondriacs. The DSM-5 stands for Demetrius Sebastian McDaniels V. Oh, never mind. It actually stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for the Mental Disorders. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And it's the 5th edition. Let's talk about the origins. Back in the olden days, there was no set standard for what mental illnesses look like. Either you had demons and you got an exorcism, or you were a witch and they burned you at the stake. Exorcism. 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 Ah! Alright, fuck you, you're going to the stake. So in 1918, the APA came out with the Statistical Manual for the Use of Institutions for the Insane. That worked okay for a while, but then World War II happened, and there were a bunch of soldiers that developed mental disorders. That's when the doctors realized, oh, this book sucks. Now it still doesn't make sense. Oh! PTSD. Yeah, it looks like you're fucked. So the first edition of the DSM was published in 1952. Then 1973, 1980, 1994, and 2013 respectively. What's the difference between each edition? Well, every couple years the APA will come out with a new book that updates the current disorders and adds new ones. Alright, now let's get into some disorders. I want to give a little disclaimer before we start. When med students are reading about this book, they're warned that they might start to believe that they have the disorder they're reading about. It's kind of like when you go on WebMD and you start to think you have an illness. My God, I'm pregnant. That's a great segue into my first disorder, hypochondriacs. Hypochondriacs are people who think that they have a disorder, to the point where it becomes unhealthy. In order for someone to be diagnosed as a hypochondriac, they have to become so obsessed with that disorder that it impedes on their everyday functions. They have to ignore the doctors telling them that they're fine, and it has to last for 6 months. Basically, if you think you're a hypochondriac, you are. Usually this is treated with therapy and stress management techniques like meditation. It can also be treated with SSRI drugs. SSRI stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitors. This animation is kind of weird, so let me explain it. It's basically showing the synaptic gap, which for the purposes of this video, you just need to know it's a part of the brain. And there are these chemicals in your brain called serotonin that, among other things, make you feel happy. There are also these little things called reuptakes that go around collecting the serotonin in your brain. SSRIs go around stopping those reuptakes, causing you to have an excess amount of serotonin in your brain, so you feel happy all the time and you no longer have any anxiety. What's crazy is that occasionally hypochondriacs start to develop the symptoms of the disorder that they think they might have. So if a hypochondriac thinks that they're schizophrenic, they can start to become schizophrenic. Back in high school, my psychology teacher was telling us about how he had a coworker who's a hypochondriac, and that coworker was friends with someone with cerebral palsy. Well, after a couple years, she started to develop symptoms of cerebral palsy. It even got to the point where she had to use a wheelchair. This kind of segues into the next disorder, phantom pregnancy. This is a very rare condition where women believe that they're pregnant, but aren't actually pregnant. They will test negative on pregnancy tests. There's no evidence of a baby on an ultrasound, and sometimes they haven't even gotten jiggy with it. But don't write them off as crazy just yet. Some of these women have convinced themselves so much that they'll even have pregnancy stomachs, morning sickness, strange cravings, and some even go into labor. And wouldn't you know it? No baby. The next disorder on the list is SAD, also known as seasonal affective disorder. This is a very common disorder, affecting about 3 million Americans a year. Sad is when someone becomes depressed during the winter because there's less sunlight, hence the name. Yeah, Dr. Miller, I've been having suicidal thoughts ever since you put me on this new medication. Nah, you're just sad. Yeah, that's why I'm here. Next disorder is OCD, which stands for Obsessive-compulsive disorder. This is one that most people think that they have, but don't actually have. Spoiler, you probably don't have it. OCD is when someone has an irrational fear that leads to a compulsive behavior. An example of this might be, if I don't subscribe to mansplaining, someone's going to murder my entire family. OCD symptoms vary from person to person. Some people with OCD have an extreme fear of germs, like the comedian and America's Got Talent host, Howie Mandel. Or they might arrange their spice rack in a certain way. They might repeat words, phrases, or actions, or they might have a combination of these symptoms. Whatever their symptoms are, one thing is universal, and that's extreme anxiety. There aren't many treatments for OCD. One option is therapy. Another options are SSRI drugs. And that's about it. Oh, and if you're one of those people that thinks that they have OCD, you probably don't. You probably have OCPD. OCPD stands for Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. And if you're bugged by things like this, or this, then I'm willing to bet you have it. In order to be diagnosed with OCPD, you have to show 4 of these 8 symptoms. Is so preoccupied with details to the extent where the major point of the activity is lost. Is an extreme perfectionist. Clearly, that's me. Is so devoted to work that they don't have friends. I don't have any friends anyways. Is inflexible about matters. Is a hoarder. Is a micromanager. Doesn't like to spend money. And is stubborn. Healthline.com says that people with OCPD feel the need to impose their beliefs on others. So if you have OCPD, chances are people don't like you. Next disorder is DID, dissociative identity disorder. Used to be called multiple personality disorder, but it's back and it's better than ever. DID is when someone has 2 or more personalities and will swap between them. Usually, dissociative identity disorder is a result of trauma and is used as a way to repress traumatic memories. The 2 distinct personalities are almost like 2 different people, having 2 different personalities, 2 different histories, and 2 different names. There isn't really a cure for this, so if you have it, I'm sorry. Therapy helps, kind of. On the bright side, sometimes it does go away. I feel like changing the name from MPD to DID is fitting. Oh hey MPD, how you been? Actually, it's DID. What? I go by DID now. I'm a new person. Okay. That's all I got for today, y'all. Do you have any mental disorders that you want to share with us? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. I post videos like this weekly. Y'all have a great day.
I was like 16.